the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Oh, it brings me back so many memories from my university when I had to recite this. And I was good at it actually, and there is no coincidence that I'm actually citing Shakespeare today. In today's video, we're gonna start this unbelievable journey into the life of William, the man who created all of these wonderful poems and plays. And we're gonna look into this theory that probably he wasn't the man who was actually writing all of these marvelous works. I know what you're thinking. What? It cannot be. Well, I recently dived into this crazy rabbit hole that got me a little bit suspicious in regards to this topic, and I decided that I should probably share this one with you. Today's video will also concern a little bit of the topic from my previous video, namely Rosicrucians, and a man whose name was also mentioned in my previous video, Sir Francis Bacon. Hello, my lighthousers. I'm happy that you have returned on my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button. First of all, huge thank you for your feedback about my previous video in regards to Rosicrucians. It didn't receive as many views that I wanted to, probably because the algorithm doesn't really like this kind of topics. So if you know somebody who would love that kind of topic, do share that video with them. I'm sure they're gonna love it. That being said, this is the last video of the year 2024 on my channel, so make sure to give me some extra love before that new year starts. Press those likes, write comments, share the video, make sure you have subscribed, and if you want to give me extra love in a form of some financial support, there is Patreon link down in the description box, so you can also do that. And again, huge thanks to David Craig, who was my first and so far the only Patreon of my channel. And also a little shout out to my husband who did this. I mean, look at the ambiance. Now, without any further hesitation, let's jump straight into the story about William Shakespeare. Today we're gonna look into controversies in regard to his life and also in his actual ability to write all of the poems and plays that we know. And there are certainly some red flags about his life facts and also about his education and ability to write in general. And in some sources, the people who are analyzing this problem actually refer to William Shakespeare as the ghost captain and also as the Rosicrucian mask. So what's up with that? First of all, during his lifetime, Shakespeare wrote an enormous amount of literary works. This raises the question, is one person even able to write that kind of amount of literary works during his lifetime? So some sources suggest that this cannot be done by one person, or even there was one or several persons behind William Shakespeare's works. And also, they kind of are suspicious because, well, William Shakespeare did not have that kind of necessary literary culture in his life. And what supports these arguments are actually some pretty simple facts. So first of all, as we all know, Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, and that's a small city that didn't boast at all of being one of the cultural centers where, you know, you would get inspired to write and create poems and plays. In Stratford during that time, you wouldn't find a school that would provide young William with the necessary education that would later on lead him to become this successful writer. And also, he came from a simple family. His father was initially a farmer. Later on, he became a glove maker. He was also invited to work in the local government, but he wasn't a noble. So there was no high education in his family. Also, his mother, although she was from local gentry, meaning she was like higher society. She wasn't that well educated, because we know during that time the main purpose of a woman was basically to find a husband and make babies, you know. In short, there were no connections to aristocracy, nobility, which would lead the young William to have some kind of interactions, connections, or experiences necessary to create that kind of works that we know under his name right now. Another aspect is that there is no record that has survived that William Shakespeare actually attended even the closest school to his house. So historians logically assume that he was attending the school that was around 400 meters away from his home. That would be King's New School in Stratford. But as I said, no documentation proves that. It's just an assumption. William Henry Smith, in his pamphlet Was Lord Bacon the Author of Shakespeare's Plays, actually mentions that at one point William Shakespeare's father was taken away from the honor of being a glove maker, and he had to pay some kind of fine to the government. And this is when the family became really poor, and he allegedly had to take out William from the school. So this just adds up that William didn't have any kind of good education. So this might have happened in the year 1577. That was the time when the poverty really hit hard Shakespeare's family. But another interesting thing is that, okay, if you don't go to school, you still can be like a wunderkind and have some kind of very special skills or abilities. There is also no documentation or any kind of proof that Shakespeare was some kind of wunderkind. Then it is known that William got married to a woman who was 8 years older than him. And it is also suggested that at this point, after this marriage, he decided to leave his family and his wife in Stratford, and he moved to London to find some kind of happiness or purpose, or maybe just to earn money. There in London, he became an actor. He started literally from the bottom and moved all the way up and became part of this theatrical company. And the documentation in Stratford proves that he was now able to send money back to his family to support them, and he also had enough money to live kind of very good life for himself. So, as we understand, William was a man of limited education, and his main goal was to succeed in his job, namely as actor, earn as much money as possible to send back something at home and live a good life. So, can we imagine a person like this also being able to create poems and plays? If we develop a little bit further all the controversies in regards to Shakespeare, there is another one that's surrounded with a lot of mysteries up to nowadays, and it's in regards to Shakespeare's signature. Nowadays, there exist 6 documents with William Shakespeare's signature. The first one is a deposition in the Belleau versus Montjoy case, dated on May 11th, 1612. There he had a minor role in this lawsuit. The second one was the purchase of a house in Blackfriars, London, dated 10th of March 1613. The third one is the mortgage of the same house, dated to 11th of March 1613. And the last example of his signature is his last will and testament, which contains 3 signatures, one on each page, dated to March 25th, 1616. So some say that you can literally see that the person who created these signatures was quite illiterate, and that this person was not really friends with regular writing, because like if you write every day, you develop more better writing skills, right? And according to these people who are suspicious about these signatures, they say that it looks like he had like trained himself to sign in this way, or there was even somebody who was holding his hand and writing like his name and surname in these documents. And another important note, that up to nowadays there is 0 examples of any kind of work that are handwritten by William Shakespeare. So we only have these 4 signatures, and those are the only things that show how William Shakespeare was writing. As an author that demonstrates a knowledge knowledge of the literature of all centuries, Shakespeare should have had some kind of source where to get the inspiration and the knowledge. And this means probably he would have had some kind of extensive library where he would read, and this would get him inspired to create all of these works. However, there is no mention about him having some kind of extensive libraries or valuable books. In fact, even in his testament, he doesn't mention anything like that. He is more concerned about materialistic things. What is more, it is said that Shakespeare's daughter Judith was illiterate, and all she could do was sign with a mark. There is a proof on a document. She made this pigtail mark, and then the lawyer just continued her surname on her behalf. So the question here is, at least from me, like, wouldn't you even try to teach your daughter to be literate? I mean, yes, we do understand that during those times women were not supposed to be so educated, but come on, you're a genius writer. You write all of these poems and plays. Don't you want to share this kind of joy with your kids? Another argument raised by people who are suspicious about William Shakespeare is in regards to the languages. Like, where would he learn Spanish, Italian, Dutch, not to even mention Latin and Greek? Because there is no sign that William Shakespeare ever left England, so there is no option even for him to learn these languages. We already established that William Shakespeare was money driven, so he needed money, but during his life he never tried to take any kind of control of publishing of his works. All of them were published anonymously. Like, why did he do like that? And even after his death, none of the relatives really kind of participated in the publishing of his first folio, so they didn't get any like percentage from the earnings. So was it because actually those poems and plays didn't really belong to the Shakespeare family? Just saying. But back to the first folio, if you don't know, it's a collection of plays by William Shakespeare, officially called Mr. William Shakespeare's Comedies, Histories, and Tragedies. This was first published in the year 1623, 7 years after his death, and scholars refer to this collection as First Folio. It is also interesting that many point out that plays included in First Folio differ from other plays by Shakespeare, as if they would have been written by different authors. Now, as I said, in his testament, he wasn't concerned about any kind of manuscripts or unpublished works that he would love to like give to his like daughter or relatives. He was mainly concerned in his will and testament with some materialistic things. Like, for example, he's mentioning big silver gold-plated vase or like a bed. So some trivial things, nothing related to literature. And also his death is surrounded by some mysteries, like allegedly he died on April 29th, year 1616 at the age of 52. And this happened only a month after he signed his last will and testament. There is no real documented evidence explaining why and how he actually died. Half a century later, John Ward, the vicar of Strafford, wrote in his notebook, I quote,
Shakespeare, Drayton, and Ben Jonson had a merry meeting, and it seems drunk to heart, for Shakespeare died of a fever there contracted.
Okay, then this means, according to the vicar, that William Shakespeare died from hangover. Pretty trivial, I can say, but the fact that he could have been there drinking with those men, Drayton and Jonson, this can be valid since there is proof that he was friends with them. So I don't know if he really died from being hangover, but like, yeah, we still don't know how it really happened. Many sources point out that Shakespeare's private life was more average and more concerned and related to like materialistic things rather than philosophy, which is very significant in his works. And all of that, and also the previous mentioned facts about his life story, pointed out to the possibility that maybe William Shakespeare was not the man behind all of these poems and all of these plays. And this is where all of these interesting theories pop up. The philosophical ideas behind Shakespeare's plays clearly demonstrate that the person who created them is well acquainted with doctrines and ideas that are really close also to Rosicrucian philosophy. Some argue that Shakespeare's works are carrying such a deep and grand meaning that would be available only to the greatest and enlightened minds on this earth. So, what I'm saying is that some people believe that William Shakespeare was just the front of something a lot deeper. Could be also Rosicrucians or also something else. We're gonna look into that throughout this video. And here I would like to introduce another name, Sir Francis Bacon, the person who allegedly, most probably, was actually that person behind William Shakespeare's works. Of course, historians and researchers looked into this possibility and at the end denied and said, like, no, this is not possible. But still, the believers say that all of these researchers and historians missed one very important thing. How deep is the meaning in William Shakespeare's works? If they would understand that, they would think completely differently. Shakespeare's works, according to the believers, carry supernatural, transcendental meaning that could not be seen by researchers led by motivation of materialistic world. Who else than a person who is familiar with Kabbalistic, Pythagorean, or Platonian philosophies could have written Macbeth or Hamlet? Father of modern science, editor of the Bible, patron of modern democracy, and one of the founders of Freemasonry, Sir Francis Bacon was actually that kind of person who could have all the traits to create something like this. Sir Francis Bacon, many people do believe that he was part of Rosicrucian fraternity. If you haven't seen the video about Rosicrucians and their beginnings, do watch my previous video just to stay updated with the topic. Because if Bacon was part of Rosicrucians, then he had the access to universe's knowledge. In fact, if you watch the previous video, you already know that there is a rumor that maybe Bacon was even this mysterious father CRC who founded a Rosicrucian fraternity. I'm not a strong believer into that, but I kind of feel that he might be at least a member of Rosicrucian fraternity. Now, before we jump into these signs that possibly Bacon was the man behind William Shakespeare's works, let's look into a little bit of his life. Like when I was researching his life's facts, there were some really interesting stuff appearing. Francis Bacon, 1st Viscount St. Alban, 1st Lord Verulam, was born in 1561 and according to the sources died in the year 1626. So he lived longer than Shakespeare allegedly did. But the death date is actually a disputable question, since some say it was staged and that in reality he secretly left England and afterwards lived for many years in Germany. There, allegedly, he would dedicate himself completely to the enlightened secret order and spreading its doctrines. This aligns really well with all the manifestos and their appearance in Germany and Europe during that time, which brings us again back to Rosicrucian theory. And to add a little gossip to this story, there is a rumor that Francis Bacon was actually a son that was born out of wedlock to Queen Elizabeth and Graf Leicester. Not sure if it's true, but like, you know, just spilling some tea. But apart from gossip, the CV of Francis Bacon is very impressive, which is something we cannot say about Shakespeare's CV. He attended Trinity College at the University of Cambridge at the age of 12 under the personal tutelage of John Whitgift, future Archbishop of Canterbury. Bacon's education was conducted largely in Latin and followed the medieval curriculum. It was at Cambridge that Bacon first met Queen Elizabeth, who was impressed by his intellect and was accustomed to calling him the young Lord Keeper. Bacon was into politics, science, literature. He traveled the world. He's been to Italy, Spain, and during these trips, he would also learn languages, which is also a very important point that I already mentioned before. And during these trips, he would learn about diplomacy, statecraft, and many other things that would be useful in order to create works that, for example, William Shakespeare was writing. So Francis Bacon's life is like full of events and really interesting, but I'm not going to dive into every and each detail. The main point that I wanted to deliver is that he would be that kind of person that we could imagine writing poems and plays like those under the name of William Shakespeare. So to prove or disapprove this theory about Bacon, many of Shakespeare's works were analyzed from the beginning until end, and it was concluded that, okay, like almost all of the plays that Shakespeare wrote were written around 1611. That was the time when he retired from his like acting. But an interesting fact is that during that time, according to Smith's pamphlet, during that time, Bacon started his studies in Gray's Inn. He wanted to become a barrister. There in Gray's Inn, he became friends with Lord Southampton. And this guy is actually well known as being a patron of William Shakespeare. Is this a coincidence? I don't know. According to Smith's pamphlet, it is said that during the time when he was studying to become a barrister, he would also participate in some theatrical performances, and he even wrote to Lord Treasurer, where he offered him and a dozen other students from Gray's Inn as some kind of actors who are ready to perform in front of Queen. And also apparently there is documentation proving that there had been a performance that was held in front of Queen in Greenwich in February 1587, and it is said that this play was called Dumb Shows, and it says that it was partially devised by Meister Francis Bacon. So he was also into kind of this like playwriting or directing. So during that time when William Shakespeare allegedly wrote his works, Bacon was quite active into these like performances and literature and theater. All in all, there are two theories that Sir Francis Bacon was actually some kind of like mediator between Rosicrucians and the rest of the world. Like he would hide some secret teachings and messages in his works that were coming from Rosicrucians. And another theory is that he would surround himself with some intellectual writers and create this kind of like little writers society, and they would like work together to spread some kind of message to the world, hiding behind William Shakespeare's name. I also wanted to mention another fact about his life. I think it's very interesting, and it also proves his intellectual capabilities. It's actually related to the translation of the Bible of King Jacob. So the Bible of King Jacob is a translation of the Bible in English, and it was made under the patronage of King of England James I, and it was released in the year 1611. There exists a theory that the translation of this Bible was trusted to Sir Francis Bacon. And let me dive a little bit into this topic because I think it's very interesting. The question of creating a new translation of the Bible was posed to the king by a group of Puritans led by Reverend John Reynolds. To solve it, King James I convened the so-called Hampton Court Conference in January 1604, where a number of mistakes were made in previous translations, primarily in the Episcopal Bible, officially adopted by the Anglican Church. And it was decided to create a new translation. 47 translators, members of the Anglican Church, were engaged in the translation. The head of the New Testament translation into English, as it is known, was Church of England Bishop and academic Thomas Ravis. Now, some argue that actually it was Francis Bacon who worked on this translation and not anybody else. Allegedly, he worked like a whole year with this translation, and then in 1611 it was finally released. And the fact that allegedly he was that translator is the emblem that is on this Bible. That kind of signifies that that was Sir Francis Bacon who did it. So we're going to talk about these emblems in a brief. It's such an interesting topic. So this emblem that I mentioned that allegedly was put in this translation and which already allegedly signifies Bacon's presence, it's a message that he was not able to put into the translation. And this message is about Rosicrucian key to the mystical and Masonic Christianity. So here is an example. The one that you are seeing now is actually from Shakespeare's King Richard II, placed in quarto, published in 1597. This emblem that is used on the headline of a page for a long time has been considered as a signature or emblem of Sir Francis Bacon or Rosicrucians. It is called bright and dark A. In literally or symbolic context, bright and dark A might allude to the dualities of human experience, where A represents the ambiguity or complexity of the human nature. This could be explored in themes of light versus darkness, hope versus despair, good versus evil. Now, knowing that, let's look more carefully at the emblem again. Do you see it? Bright A and dark A. Let's do another one. This volume, called Alciati Emblemata, was published in Paris in 1618. Researchers of the life secrets of Sir Francis Bacon draw their attention to it for many reasons. The depiction of a boar. Bacon would often use this animal in his puns and word games, especially because of the etymology of his surname. In this picture, you see two pillars in the background, which allegedly signify Freemasons. And the main thing, right in the center, two letters A. One is bright and other is dark, which let us conclude this emblem would belong to Sir Francis Bacon. So, as I mentioned, these symbols and emblems were also in Shakespeare's works. So, does that prove that Bacon had some kind of influence in those works or on William Shakespeare, or maybe he was behind William Shakespeare? Well, of course, we can argue still about that, and we would need some more proof. We already talked about the fact that Bacon knew languages, he had the connections and experiences. So, what else? Bacon was hanging around the royal household. He precisely knew the parliamentary laws and the etiquette of the royal court. All of this can be clearly seen in Shakespeare's plays. It is doubtful if a simple person with doubtful education coming from Stratford could have known all of this. Now, I want to also return back a little bit to the library thing. I already mentioned that Shakespeare probably didn't have like extensive library where he would get his inspiration. Well, Sir Francis Bacon, though, he did have that kind of library with amazing books, and many of like anecdotes and quotes in William Shakespeare's works are actually coming from these like literature works from earlier times. And what is important to note is that these quotes and anecdotes at that time were not even translated into English. So in order to put them in these poems and plays, you would have to have some kind of knowledge of foreign languages in order to translate them and put them in those plays, if you know what I mean. Continuing the thought about symbolism and Bacon's hidden messages, it is alleged that number 33 was like a Baconian number, the number under which Francis Bacon was hiding. And the people who believe in this Baconian theory would find some kind of signs of this 33 in many literature works. Of course, if you want to see something, you would probably find where to see it, but I'm just going to mention some of the examples. You decide yourself if you believe if it's a sign or not. But for example, in the part 1 of Shakespeare's King Henry IV, the name Francis is mentioned for 33 times. Some of the believers in Baconian theory would also be a little bit obsessed with acrostic in Shakespeare's works, like that's when you collect all the first letters of each line and then you read some kind of message or a word. So they would do also that one. I not necessarily approve of that because, as I said, if you want to see something, you're gonna see it. But of course, there is some kind of truth in it. Maybe this can also be considered hidden message from Sir Francis Bacon. I don't know. There is also something more. Allegedly, in Bacon's will, there was a part where he said he leaves his soul to the god, the body to be buried in a secret place, but his name and memory about him he would love to leave to the people and other centuries. And now we get to the most interesting part, to his personal comrades who were with him for a certain period of time. So we can actually translate this in many ways, and one of them being that probably he was surrounded by some intellectual friends, probably also involved in literature, and that would also kind of bring us back to the idea that maybe Bacon was surrounding him with some other writers, creating this kind of secret writers society, and who would basically be behind, let's say, for example, William Shakespeare's works. But like, it's just a thing, a suggestion. There is no real proof. But these like secret messages and Baconian number and emblems, that was actually a thing that could be seen also in the works of other authors during the 16th and 17th century. For example, on the page number 33, again, remember it's a Baconian number, of a book called A Treasury or Storehouse of Similes by English lexicographer Robert Cowdery, published in the year 1609, there is a sentence that in simple words says that people will be laughing about the poor man who was given expensive clothes so that he can make himself look respectable on the stage, but he tends to leave these clothes on even after the play is over and walks around boasting about it. Can this be about William Shakespeare? Because it certainly sounds like that, if we like believe the theory that William Shakespeare was just a front of his plays and poems. And also, this might be just a coincidence, but many authors exactly on the page 33 have put some references to, let's say, for example, hog, which be associated with Bacon, and some other stuff that would be associated with Bacon. Maybe it's a coincidence, but like at this point, I guess it's like too many of them. Also, if you look at Bacon's New Atlantis, some argue that actually on the title page, there is even a message or a sign that he knows some kind of secret, and some translate it as the secret about William Shakespeare. So on this title page, there is depicted this father of time who is saving a woman from a cave. And then there is a message in Latin, which basically says that the secret truths will be revealed on its time. Is he talking about William Shakespeare? I don't know. But like, if you want to translate it like that, probably you can look at it like that. So it is also believed that in order to convey all of these messages and codes in different books by Bacon and also by his like teammates, if we can say like that, they would create these like unnecessarily intended typos and mistakes. And these mistakes actually were not mistakes, those were hidden messages. And this actually applies also to Shakespeare's work. So for example, Shakespeare's folio. So Shakespeare's folio has some number mistakes. But an interesting thing is that even this folio that was published after 9 years, so basically coming from a totally different press, still contained the same number mistakes than the first folio. So was it like purposefully maintained? So here is what's controversial. In both folios, there is a thing with page 153 with comedies. In both folios, the first one and the one published 9 years after, it is actually numbered as 151 and not 153, as it is supposed to be according to the sequence. And there is more. So why the same mistakes in different publishings unless there is a meaning and something special about these pages? The wrong numbering of the pages actually is a thing in Bacon's work. For example, in De Dignitate et Augmentis Scientarium, published in the year 1640, the pages 353 and 354 are numbered as 351 and 352. Also, it is noted by some of the researchers that the number mistakes basically were playing around numbers 50, 51, 52, 53, and 54. So what's the message behind these numbers? Probably we will never learn, but I don't think at this point that this looks like a coincidence. So what could be this meaning behind these mistakes that were put in Shakespeare's works and other works of writers alike Bacon and also himself? So first of all, it is suggested that he might be like a mediator between Rosicrucians, that he would put these coded messages into these books for the next generations of Rosicrucians. So, for example, new generation of Rosicrucians start to work, and then they know that they can pick up certain books, find certain pages, and then decode something and receive some kind of message. So that is like one option why this was done. Or maybe it was just simply like communication between Rosicrucian members in a certain way, or maybe even some kind of communication between the writers themselves, if there was a certain little writer society created by Bacon himself. We will never know, probably. But the fact remains a fact. There is a high chance that William Shakespeare's works contained these kind of messages. From where are they coming? What was the purpose? We can just guess. And if even they were written by William Shakespeare, of course. And if we develop further this idea that Bacon indeed had his own fraternity or society of writers who could also probably be behind William Shakespeare's work, here's a little example. So this is one visual that allegedly proves something. This emblem is allegedly the one that Bacon used to mark books that have the hidden message somewhere. Variations of it were used by Bacon's allies. It can be found only in very rare books. Examples where you can see this emblem is Shakespeare's first folio, published in 1623, Bacon's Novum Organum from 1620, the Bible of King Jacob from 1611, Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen, and Sir Walter Raleigh's The History of the World. So the one that you're seeing on the screen actually is from the Sir Walter Raleigh's History of the World. And speaking about him, he was certainly an ally with Sir Francis Bacon, and he was actually executed in a quite interesting way, unjust way, I must say. And maybe this was a way how people wanted to get rid of the people who knew too much. Namely, those would be the people who would be around Sir Francis Bacon, like enlightened people. And also, if we continue about this Sir Raleigh, is that he also was in government, he also knew languages, he also traveled, and some people even suggest that he was the one behind William Shakespeare's works. But of course, all the historians would deny this and say that this was not possible. So Bacon, Raleigh, a group of writers, and all of this is denied. But here are some facts of the possibility that there even existed a group of writers who were behind William Shakespeare's works. How about the portraits of Shakespeare? I mean, if I say William Shakespeare, you would probably have this one image of him, and it would look something like this. So, what's up with it? Was this really how William Shakespeare looked, and are there any Bacon, and I'm not talking about the food here, any Bacon signs in this portrait? The truth is, there are no authentic portraits of Shakespeare. There are visible differences on portraits created by different authors, Droeshout, Chandos, Janssen, Hunt, etc. Baconian theory believers point out specifically to Droeshout's portrait. The portrait was engraved by Flemish-English printmaker Martin Droshout in the year 1623. This portrait was used as a frontispiece of the first folio published in that year. There you can see Shakespeare in a formal court costume. The costume is one of the red flags, because why would he wear it? We allegedly know he was not in court and not even related to it. Bacon? He was, though. Another red flag related to this portrait is this unnatural, stiff kind of face, which is very unusual for the style of like paintings and drawings during that time. And some people believe that this portrait should be perceived as some kind of caricature related to Bacon. And this is why this face looks like that. What the theory believers say is that if we compare Droshout's portrait to the portraits of Francis Bacon, then it is possible to notice some important similarities. For example, one that is related to retouching. Baconians argue that Shakespeare's portraits are actually portraits of a person wearing a mask. Possibly Bacon is behind it. If we look closer, we can see that there is a visible line from the ear to the chin. You don't see how the face or head is linked to the neck or body. The jawline kind of rests on the costume. If you think about it, maybe it shows that this is a mask on someone's face. This would approve the theory of the caricature. Now, if we take a portrait of Francis Bacon and put it on top of Shakespeare's, the one that was used on this first folio that we just analyzed, we can see that there are a lot of similarities, and this just makes this thing even more controversial. And let's be honest, both of the faces look exactly the same. The only difference is the props, like Bacon would usually be depicted wearing hats, having a beard, or some different clothes. And in general, there is just like probably one portrait of Bacon without a hat. It was made by Van Sommer. And there, without this hat, we can see that Francis Bacon has this like huge forehead, which is a thing that was always seen on Shakespeare's portraits. So even that is similar. Remember I told you that Bacon's death was surrounded by mysteries, and we do not really know if he really died on the day that we know that he died. Maybe he was a Rosicrucian who just went to Germany and like created all of this fraternity thing. Well, there is another thing that I would love to talk about in relation to Bacon's death, namely philosopher's death. Philosopher's death in general would mean that the person who wanted to become a Rosicrucian had to do some certain things in this materialistic world, which would be the thing that Bacon did, allegedly, with his like puns and secrets and mysteries. And then once he has reached like certain point and he's ready to be initiated in Rosicrucians, he would have to have this like philosopher's death. So he would die in the materialistic world and leave all of his legacy to the Rosicrucians. But actually, he did not die. He just went one level higher, where like materialistic world is not even a thing anymore. So if you watch the previous episode about the fraternity of Rosicrucians, you would probably understand what this means, because like I was talking about these initiations. So in short, you would kind of die for the people on the earth, but you would just change a name, change everything, and get this like totally another level of life. And it is alleged and suggested that probably Sir Francis Bacon didn't die. He was just having this like philosopher's death, and that would also kind of explain why people are saying that he was related to Rosicrucians. And also we have to remember all of these messages and mysteries that he left behind. At the end, the main question: was William Shakespeare, the guy who was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, the real author behind all of these wonderful poems and plays? We discussed a couple of theories. First one being that maybe Sir Francis Bacon was behind it. I kind of tend to believe it, considering the facts about William Shakespeare's life and past, but still we don't have any kind of solid evidence, just suggestions and alleged things. So I don't know. I kind of also tend to believe that there might have been some kind of secret writer society, because we cannot deny the emblems and secret messages and numbers hidden in these literary works. And I'm also not excluding the Rosicrucian theory. I just don't know if that Rosicrucian theory really kind of explains the William Shakespeare mystery. Anyways, I am so excited to hear your thoughts about this topic. Let me know, what do you think? Was William Shakespeare the real writer, or you believe more in the Sir Francis Bacon theory, or maybe you know something else? Just write down in comments. And at the end, as I said, this is the last video of this year on my channel. And looking back at this year, I'm really proud of myself. And I can say that I certainly enjoyed this ride with you. I have found so many subscribers, and I'm so happy to have each one of you here on my channel, returning, watching, commenting, interacting. And I hope that the next year will bring me more subscribers and more interesting people to meet, and more articles and topics to cover here. Also, I just wanted to say that I'm happy that I finally found some kind of structure for my channel, because now I'm posting probably once per month, but like the topics are for real. And I'm really hoping to continue like this. That being said, I also have some big plans. The first of them, of course, being that finally finishing my studio, although this one also kind of looks good, thanks to my husband. And I also would love to have more Patreons that would support my work. Shout out to David Craig again, because that would really help me to improve the quality of my videos, and also probably create and post more often. Now I'm literally struggling with time, and this is why I have started GoFundMe, where I am collecting money for to have an video editor, so that I can concentrate more on research, filming the videos, and this editing part that takes the most time from me I could delegate to somebody who can do it for me. So I will put the GoFund link down in the description, also my Patreon there. Apart from that, you can also support me by pressing those likes under my videos, sharing it with your friends, leaving comments, anything works, and I'm happy to see you here. So I hope you have a lovely Christmas and Happy New Year. See you in the year 2025.